You are Locked On Rockets Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Houston on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Rockets fans? Welcome into the very first Locked On Rockets Postcast with me, Michael Connor, who, if you're paying attention, is I'm the Locked On Postcast Houston host here for Locked On Sports. And guess what? We are starting off our Houston versus Dallas day with Rockets and Mavericks. We'll have Astros and Rangers later. We appreciate you watching the first two that I've done of those. Appreciate you watching this one as well. Unfortunately, the Rockets today decided they didn't need to start Houston versus Dallas day with a win. It was absolutely brutal. We have a lot of elements of it to talk about. Of course, the Rockets still with a chance, an outside slim chance of being a play-in team coming into today, but they cannot afford cough-ups, and guess what they did? They had a big old fat cough up late. So we'll get through all of it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I got the wrong one there. It's brought to you by Prize Picks. I'm sorry. We'll get to FanDuel later with the Astros game. But it's brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. So let's go through the game today with the Rockets. What a start it was. Jalen Green and company. Jalen Green comes out blazing. 6 of 7 in the first quarter. Has 15 points. Rockets put up 42 in the quarter. And it's like, okay, you know what? They're not going to go out there and they're not going to just roll over today. This is a game against a Dallas team that is still fighting for the seeding in the Western Conference. They are really good. We know that. The chance the Rockets had today was to also split the season series between these two teams. And I don't think you could have asked for a better start to the first quarter. I thought the defensive effort out of the gate was unbelievable. I mean, they built a 20-point lead like that. And by the way, the Mavericks sitting in that 5 seed, they're comfortable with a win today. They're feeling a lot more comfortable with that. The Rockets now still sitting out there eliminated, unfortunately, from everything else because, well, it's just been that kind of season. They could not afford, again, any kind of cough-ups, and they had cough-ups. It stinks. In a season that had so much promise early on, I think that today was kind of one of those days, kind of a microcosm of the season. It started so well, and then it hit a lull, and it wasn't very good. And then it had some brief spurts where it was great, and then it looked like it was going to be great there again late. They built the lead back up late in the third to go into the fourth quarter. They kind of held it for a minute, and then they fall apart. And, of course, Dante Exum there hitting the 3 for Dallas to send it to overtime. You hate to see that anytime it's against your team, but you really hate it on a day. Now, again, we'll get to Astros later tonight, which I'll be back for that. You just like beating the city of Dallas, and you can't get that done today. Foul trouble, a massive, massive story in this basketball game today for the Rockets. I thought it really took Jalen Green out of the basketball game. He had 4 fouls in the first half, picked up number 3. Ime Udoka rolls the dice, leaves him out there, and immediately picks up that foul on that 3 against Kyrie Irving. And that's just a lapse of judgment there. You cannot be in that kind of situation where you're even close to the shooter. Unfortunately, you have to give Kyrie the open look and not even invade his space there. And that's basically what Jalen did. Landed on him, didn't allow him to have a safe landing there. That a foul that Ime Udoka asked for a challenge, which was not overturned. And you saw at the minute that replay was run there, that there was no chance that was going to come out for the Rockets at that point. But I really felt that the fouls for him zapped the energy. I mean, he went 0 for 7 from the field to Jalen Green after that. For a guy that, there's a lot of talk about what the future for Jalen is. He, by the way, finished 21 today. The overall numbers didn't look bad for him. 6 of 14 for the field, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block shot. Had a stat-wise, good-looking game. But so much of it came, at least points-wise, there in that first quarter with 15 of those. And you didn't feel the aggressiveness after that, which you understand in that moment. When you have 4 fouls and you're playing, the entire second half that way, did pick up the 5th one there late and looked like he could foul at the Rockets. Again, across the board, you just look at the fouls for many guys. Reggie Bullock had 5. Jalen, as I mentioned, had 5. Dylan Brooks had 5. Jabari Smith had 5. And I think that like everyone would expect, leads to a little bit of an issue when it comes to aggressiveness of your basketball team on the defensive end of the floor. They're not, a team that can hold a Mavericks team that plays with that kind of level of offense that they play with, consistently. It's all about the tenacity that they have, and they had a lot of tenacity throughout this basketball game. But when you're playing there and you're tentative, that's going to result in the other team going off. And look, basketball's a game of runs. We all know that. We've all been watching the NBA for a very, very long time. It's never going to stay the same. For as great as that first quarter was, where you go out there and you throw 42 points on the board, and it's like, oh, man, what a day it's going to be. You know that they're going to come back. You just know it. Even with the Rockets, being clearly a better defensive team than they ever were in the last couple of years under Steven Silas this year. Personnel matters. Coaching schemes matter. Coaching philosophy and having a hold of your players matter as well. We'll talk about Ime Udoka as we wrap up this thing tonight, because even in a game like this tonight or this afternoon, I still felt like his presence really showed for the Rockets. And I just want to go through, because this will probably be, I think, looking at the schedule with Rockets and Astros this week, and look, the Rockets not going to be a playoff team. I wanted to make sure we got a chance, at least postcast-wise, to do one of these shows before the season ended, because we won't get another opportunity to do this until the next season gets going, a season that, for me, and we'll see what the offseason has, is going to have a higher level of expectation for it. And, of course, to keep up with all things Rockets when the season is not going, check out my buddy Jackson Gatlin, who hosts the Locked On Rockets podcast. You'll also find this podcast, the video that you're watching now on YouTube. Of course, hit that subscribe button while you're here. Appreciate that. And then you'll find it on that podcast page, wherever you get your podcast, the Locked On Rockets podcast. So keep up with him throughout the offseason. He's always pumping out a bunch of content talking about your Houston Rockets. But depending on where they go in terms of personnel for next season and who they get, the expectation level for me is going to rise next year. And I think it should for everybody else. They set the bar a lot higher, kind of like now, not necessarily the level the Texans did this year, because the Texans went and became a playoff team and won a playoff game. This Rockets team looked like they had a chance there for a good period of time. They're way more talented. It's been an enjoyable season. But one of the biggest things, again, on this enjoyable season has been what the future for so many is going to look like, and Jalen Green included. And he's been so good of late. And he's really kind of flipped a little bit, I think, of my opinion and other people's opinion because of the effort in other areas of the basketball floor, whether it's defense, trying to run the offense. It's interesting, of course, that this comes in a period of time without Alperen Şengün. What would the Rockets look like at this point? Do they have any kind of consideration to changing it up? Like, I don't think that Alperen Şengün's available to anybody. But look, I think you have to think all circumstances or all possibilities are available for this Rockets team to take that next step because they need, all these young guys to continue to step forward. You saw mistakes, though, still from young guys late in this game. I mean, look at Jabari Smith there at the end of the basketball game. Has an opportunity to make it a 5-point basketball game. And this is a guy that hits 83% from the line this year. And he goes up there and chokes it. Absolutely chokes it. And clunks 2 free throws. And you saw it. Didn't have his legs under him, it looked like. Looked nervous and put out free throws that looked like nervous free throws. And that was that's why the Mavericks had the opportunity to send it to overtime. And you know how those basketball games go when your team gives up a 3-pointer or any sort of buzzer beater to send it to overtime. You're not winning in overtime. Is what it is. A brutal loss today overall. You hate to see it for this Rockets team, but we still have plenty of other aspects to get into, including one of the aspects of this game early on that really affected it. One of the guys that you would have counted on defensively and to do a lot of other things throughout the game, Amen Thompson. Let's talk about a rookie mistake for him, the growing process for others as well in just a moment with the Locked On Rockets postcast. All right, let's talk more on this Locked On Rockets postcast about Prize Picks. They, of course, the presenting sponsor of the show today. Are you on Prize Picks at this point? Well, you should be. What are you waiting for? Have you played it with the NBA action? It's a lot of fun. I had some action on it today. I'm not going to give it away I'm not going to give it away because I didn't have a great day today, but maybe you're having a great day today when it comes to your prize picks. I liked a lot of overs on Jalen Green when it comes to a lot of things, and some other guys that I threw into the mix there, and it just hasn't worked out for me to this point. So I got a chance to get out in the money, and you can get out with the money as well with prize picks. The NBA action is in full swing, and you can get in on it with the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on prize picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's playoffs. They begin, of course, April 20th. Play-in rounds beginning April 16th, 17th, and 19th. You can now win up to 100 times your money on prize picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, college basketball, all of it. There's still a college basketball game to be played tomorrow night. Do it all today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. I've been playing it. You should get out there and play it as well. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download that app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, our very first Locked On Rockets postcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm Michael Connor, by the way. If you're watching us live on YouTube, appreciate it. If you don't see this live and you're listening later on the podcast, thank you for doing that. Keep it locked with Locked On Rockets every single day on the Locked On Network. Jackson Gatlin, your host for that show. He'll have you with all the Rockets coverage as the season starts to wind down. Rockets schedule moving ahead for the rest of this week to round out that regular season. Of course, following this loss in overtime today to the Mavericks, they're going to play Orlando on Tuesday, and then they're going to finish on the road at Utah Thursday, at Portland Friday, then next Sunday out in LA. As I mentioned, because of the Astros schedule, and even though the Astros stink right now, we'll be focusing these postcasts because the games will have conflicts there for the most part on Astros because, well, they need to get it going. It's still very early in the season for that. But again, you'll be able to catch me later this afternoon, or this evening tonight with the Locked On Astros postcast. Hopefully can we get one win in the city of Houston today? Houston versus Dallas Sunday. We all know that these two cities, sports-wise, don't really like each other. Fans don't really like each other. The Rockets looked for a brief moment like they were going to give the fans a victory today, but it does not happen again as the Mavericks come back with a stunning three-pointer to send it to overtime and then winning it in OT where those Mavs running away with it from your Houston Rockets. When it comes to one of the mistakes early in the basketball game, it was Amen Thompson. And, maybe you were just getting settled into it early in the game, whatever it might be. He, in the first quarter, got a flagrant 2. And it was pretty darn blatant. Now, when the NBA did they went to replay control to a replay center in Secaucus to look at it, it was obvious from the jump. They looked at another play as well. And, we know that this Rockets team, and look, I love it. We've watched really, really non-aggressive Rockets teams throughout the years. They've been in that Steven Silas era. And I know that we're a season outside of it, but that's all we can compare it to right now. Next year, we won't compare it to the Silas era anymore. But in recent years, they just played scared, timid, lack of aggression, lack of being tough overall. This team has the exact opposite of that. Ime Udoka's come in and really set up that culture against that. And again, we're going to talk more about him to wrap up this Rockets postcast here in just a few minutes. But Amen Thompson has been a guy as a rookie that has taken, I think, that attitude, and that's kind of the guy he was coming in. If you heard anything, I actually got the opportunity to interview him the night he was drafted. I was doing a NBA draft special on the radio that night, and we had him on. Like we did, how serious he takes, as they would say, he stands on business when it comes to basketball. And he stands on business when he's going to do anything. And he probably took it a little bit too far today. And that's those growing moments when you have a 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old. The Rockets have a lot of these guys still. Even with the influx of veterans this year, they still have a lot of young basketball players. But that moment for Amen Thompson, given how banged up the Rockets have been and how he has become a key contributor to what they do on a nightly basis. Look, it was a huge part of why they won 11 games in a row when they did. You can't have those moments. And I'm sure Ime Udoka is going to talk to him, whether that's in a nice, calm voice or a very stern and loud voice like Ime Udoka has been known to do to a lot of guys in the Rockets locker room halftime this season. I don't know. I would assume that because it happened so early in the game, it's probably cooled off a bit, and it's a situation where you just have a conversation about it. But I do feel confident that, Amin Thompson, looking back on it, knows that you can't make those kind of mistakes. And it was a flat-out mistake. We'll see if the NBA does anything about it. It doesn't matter, of course, for the Rockets at this point with the way the season has gone, with the loss today. But you have to take this as a learning moment. We see this for a lot of guys on this basketball team throughout this season still. In a season where, again, it had its high early, where it looked like, oh my goodness, for sure, this is going to be a basketball team that makes it to the playoffs this year, is in the play-in, whatever it might be, and then it kind of fell apart. And it is what it is. It's kind of stinks that you hit that lull the season. You lost a lot of guys. You got a lot of guys back, and then you started to play really good basketball. But throughout it, you still had all these little mistakes at times. And it's never going to be perfect. I know that. You know that. Ime Udoka knows that. You are not going to have a situation where you're going out there and playing clean basketball every single night. I mean, look at the Mavericks on the other side of things tonight. Now, they're a team that is, veteran presence and everything. And they also are a team that makes mistakes. They turn the ball over a lot. They had a lot of key turnovers in this basketball game. I mean, they had one there late, or they had one there with about 2 minutes left in overtime tonight, where Fred VanVleet picks off that pass, or was it Jeff Green that picked off the pass? I think it was Jeff Green that picked off the pass, got it to Fred VanVleet, went down there and made a quick, tough layup, and got it back to a 1-point game. But they have their flaws too. Every single team does. There's very few teams, I guess, unless you're the Boston Celtics this year, that doesn't have some sort of major flaw or even little flaws to it. But I think one of the flaws of the Rockets at times this year is kind of getting out of your own headspace, not playing smart basketball. And that's a growth thing for so many. Now, guys like Dylan Brooks, I think it's just who Dylan is. And Dylan will still have his moments, and I think we all know he's going to have his moments. But with Amin Thompson, it's a spot where today you have to learn from it. Jabari Smith, same kind of thing. Have to learn from missing the free throws late in the basketball game like he did. It's a very, very, unfortunate thing that happened to him, missing the both of them. But you have to take those, learn from the environment, because I will give Dallas this. We might not like the city of Dallas when it comes to competing against them in sports consistently, like I mentioned. I have been to, I think, 4 games in their arena. Some of them regular season. I think 2 of them regular season and 2 of them playoffs against the Rockets back when it was the Dwight Howard, James Harden ones. I will give them this. They show up for NBA basketball there. They really, really do. And that is a great NBA atmosphere, and it's a tough NBA atmosphere. And we saw it today affect Jabari Smith there late. He looked like he was deer in the headlights for a guy that's been so good for shooting free throws overall this season. To have that kind of moment, it was unexpected, and it was another I'm a young player moment, like the Amin Thompson young player moment that he had early in that basketball game. So, again, things to learn from in this basketball game for the Rockets from a, again, very difficult loss overall. We'll talk about Ime Udoka, and since this will be our last and only Rockets Postcast, we just started this a couple of nights ago. Again, thank you for joining us here on the Locked On Rockets Postcast. We have you for all of them. I'll be back with you later tonight for Locked On Astros Postcast as well. Please get us a victory. Houston versus Dallas Day. We have to have one of them. But I kind of want to take an overall view for me on the first season of Ime Udoka. And even in a loss today, how his impact still shows in so many facets of this basketball game. We'll get to that here in just a brief moment. But first, let me ask you something. Are you a small business? When you're hiring, for your small business. You want to find quality professionals that are just right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's start to get through our last thoughts of the Rockets Locked On Rockets Postcast here on YouTube Live. Thank you to those of you that joined us. Those of you that are going to listen to this on podcast later on the Locked On Rockets podcast page, appreciate you as well. Of course, always check out the fine work that Jackson Gatlin does with the Locked On Rockets podcast all week long, giving you the best insight into Rockets every single day. You're not going to find much better in the city of Houston overall because there's not a lot of people that cover the Rockets on a day-in, day-out basis at all. And he's one of the few and does a great job at that. So, again, check out the podcast for that. He also used to be my producer way back in the day on the radio. So we always love Jackson Gatlin. But the Rockets today with the brutal loss to the Dallas Mavericks. But I wanted to spend the last few minutes of this postcast talking about Ime Udoka. And we all know the circumstances of the Rockets landing him as their head coach this past offseason. This is a guy that should have never been available to the Rockets. We all know this. I mean, he coached the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals in his one and only year there. He was phenomenal. That team, and it's kind of funny, the arc of it. You kind of see it now. The Rockets, of course, didn't have the talent. They didn't have a Jason Tatum sitting there. They didn't have a Jalen Brown sitting there like he had with the Boston Celtics. But the Rockets were kind of that kind of thing. You know, they came in and it was such a culture shock. Now, they were also a lot better coached up there in Boston because, well, they had Brad Stevens before, who was an excellent coach, then just decided that he wanted to be a GM. But the growing period, the growing pains, the Celtics played way better in the second half of the season that year compared to what they did early in the year in that first year of Ime Udoka. And, you know, I think that the growth that we've seen throughout the year has been tremendous overall. I mean, look, to be where they were because they got off to a great start, fell down on their face, and then had injuries. They could have just, and there was a case to be made from a lot of people that tried to make it out there that you go ahead and tank out the rest of the season. The Rockets owe their first-round pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They, of course, will get the pick from the Brooklyn Nets. But there was a case to be made that you tank it out and hopefully land a top 4 pick, and then you keep your pick because it's top 4 protected from Oklahoma City. They didn't do that. And that's a credit to who? First of all, the Rockets don't want to lose anymore. They've been losing for a long period of time. They've been just horrendous. They want to put out a product that is really good. And I would too. They want to make money, as they should. It's been tough times. Now, they've done a great job of keeping that building full, even in their years of losing, because they, slash prices and great initiatives to get people in the door. And look, it's still a fast-paced NBA game, and they still did a good job with that, but they don't want to be just that anymore. Completely get it, and they shouldn't want to be that anymore. But Udoka came in from day one and preached discipline and held guys accountable, and it's something that's lacked here in Houston for a very long time from a head coach. Not to put anything, bad on Mike D'Antoni. I mean, Mike D'Antoni was the architect of the best Rockets season in the regular season that we've ever seen. Of course, we've had championship years here in Houston, so those seasons qualify as better. There's been some other years where the Rockets made runs to the finals as well. But when it comes to regular season basketball, that D'Antoni team was as good as it ever was. I was a huge fan of Mike D'Antoni. I loved Mike D'Antoni when he was coach of other teams. I know that in other spots didn't go as well, Lakers, Knicks. But Phoenix, it was fantastic there for him. And I was so excited when they got him to be the head coach. They'd flirted with, at least Les Alexander, the Rockets owner at the time, had flirted with forever to get him. But what Mike didn't have was really holding guys extremely accountable. He was a player's coach from the standpoint of he let his guys go out and do what they want, kind of play how they want, and act how they want. That does not fly with Ime Udoka. And they had a franchise here that was filled with young guys, and it's, I think, easy to instill. But it is a credit to the Rockets organization because when you look back on all the teams that needed head coaches ahead of this season, they were the ones that landed him. And I think if you asked anybody out there, you think the Rockets are going to land Ime Udoka even with the baggage that he had at the time? I don't think anybody would have picked it. He wasn't on my radar at all. I have absolutely been thrilled with watching Ime Udoka coach this basketball team this season. It's been a pleasure, and I am very, very confident in the process that he has that is going to lend to future success, that if they can get the right pieces in place, look, they need, without a doubt, a definitive superstar scorer. Where they're going to get that, I do not know. They've got some good options. I just don't know where they're going to find it. They're not going to find it in the draft in all likelihood unless they just luck into it, but still that's going to be a few years process of finding that kind of player. You know, are you going to make some serious trades? Are they going to go to try and become a more veteran team this offseason? Do they look at some of these guys, whether it's the Jabari Smith or Amen Thompson, of course, Jalen Green, and say, you know what? In the right deals, of course, these guys are available. To me, of all those guys, of course, Jalen's still the one you probably want to pump out the quickest in terms of trade. The other two guys you'd like to hold on to, I don't think Jabari Smith is ever going to be a premier scorer in this league or a number one or number two option, but he's a good third or fourth best player on a basketball team that can contend because he can do a lot of things on the floor that you want out of a winner. But I do feel confident that with Ime Udoka as the man leading the charge, they've got it right. And I think that there's a lot of reasons to be excited about what is ahead for this basketball team, even if the end of the season after an 11-game winning streak is going to end on a sour note and they're going to miss out on play-in tournament. Of course, it is what it is. But a successful first year, a tip of the cap to Ime Udoka for the job that he's done. Looking forward to watching him and what he brings to this team next season for the Houston Rockets. They're not done, of course, for the week. They have a few more games left, but that's going to be it for our Rockets postcast this season. We had our big one of those. Sorry, I just knocked the camera there. But they also conflict with the Astros the rest of the way. So we'll be focusing on the Astros for the Locked On Postcast the rest of the way. Thank you to every single one of you that joined us live on YouTube today. Again, you could catch this podcast in its entirety on the Locked On Rockets podcast page and check that out weekly every single day. Jackson Gatlin has you for the Locked On Rockets podcast. Do not go too far. Hit subscribe on this YouTube page. If you haven't done that yet, please do it. Stay right there with it, though, because later tonight, Game 3 of 4 between the Astros and the Rangers. I will have the Locked On postcast for you for that. Let's hope we're talking about a win. We'll talk to you then right here with Locked On Houston Sports.